What is going on, everyone? Matt Savoca here from Awesemo.com. I'm here with my buddy Nick Lepri, and we have got another Dynasty mock draft for you. It is rookie draft season, and I know a lot of you are in SuperFlex leagues where you value the quarterback certainly much higher than those one quarterback leagues. A very unique year in SuperFlex leagues, and I'm breaking it down with my buddy Nick Lepri. Follow him at Notorious Fantasy. Nick, how are you today?
I'm doing great. I'm very excited to do this Superflex mock draft because, like you said, unlike previous years, this is very different in terms of rookie draft strategy, as the quarterbacks didn't really get the draft capital, and it just gets interesting after the first round.
Really, it really does. And I mean, we mean the first round of the NFL draft and the first round of
Yeah.
fantasy drafts, fantasy rookie drafts, we'll say, for Superflex leagues, because only one quarterback gets that first round draft capital in Kenny Pickett. We see a ton of the other quarterbacks fall down the draft board. Malik Willis goes to Tennessee, certainly a suboptimal landing spot if you're wanting any sort of fantasy value in year one. And that's certainly affecting us as we go through the draft board today, or it could be affecting us, I should say. Nick, if you don't mind pulling up the draft board, we'll get things started. I believe last time we met, you had the number one overall pick, so I'm going to take the 101. How's that sound?
Sounds great this time. Make it fair.
All right. And as we switch over, give us a like and subscribe. Remember to hit subscribe on the Fantasy Football channel and the Awesemo Best Ball channel. Search for it up in the YouTube search bar, too, because we got a ton of content coming throughout the 2022 offseason. Nick, myself, Makajewski, Dave Laughlin. All right. You know what to do. Hit that notification bell, too, so that you always know when we're going live for some of our live drafts as well. I'm not changing things at the 101 in a Superflex league at all this year. I'm taking Breese Hall. He had the draft capital, the fourth pick of the second round, and there have been some in the social media draftnik sphere, however large and however credible that is, that have said that 5 or 6 years ago, Breece Hall probably would have been a first-round pick and maybe a top 15 pick at that. Coming out of Iowa State, he's just 20 and a half years old. He'll be 21 by the time the season starts. 5'11", 217 pounds, an upper percentile BMI at over 30, and a ridiculous speed score, a 98th percentile speed score among all running backs, according to playerprofiler.com. His best comparable player on that website, Jonathan Taylor. Okay, now you're getting me a little excited. Breece Hall doesn't have the best landing spot, but he certainly doesn't have a bad one in this new look Jets offense. He should get the opportunities right away. Broke out as an 18-year-old. Sorry, quarterback needy teams. Take Breece Hall at the 101 or trade back.
Yeah, I completely agree. If you're at the 101, most years in the Superflex draft, you're taking that quarterback, but this year it's basically locked and loaded. You have to go running back. And if you need that quarterback, like you said, I would definitely look to trade up. Breece Hall is going to be the 101, I would say, in probably 95% of drafts that you do. Maybe in one of the drafts, if you did 100 of them, someone goes ahead and drafts one of those wide receivers. But at the end of the day, I would go Breece Hall at the 101. I'm not too locked and loaded on the fact that I think that he's going to be this elite player his rookie year, but I think going forward as the Jets build a little bit better of a team, that he will be pretty solid for fantasy football. And again, I don't think he's going to be top 12 this year, but if we're looking at 2023, I think there's a good chance he finishes inside the top 12.
Fair enough. I do think that he is way better than Michael Carter, and it might
Yeah.
just prove out on the field quicker than we all think. Anyway, he's the 101. Where are you going at the 102?
Yeah, at the 102, the one running back went first. I think at the 102, you have to go wide receiver. And I think that this starts a run of wide receivers in most Dynasty rookie drafts. So I'm going to go with Drake London. He is my number one ranked wide receiver. Now, can you make an argument for a bunch of other wide receivers? 100%. But I like Drake London the best. Drake London played 3 years at USC. He had his true breakout season in my book in 2021, 20 years old. Before he had that ankle injury, now this is, it's modern medicine today, right? The ankle injury isn't going to knock him out 2 decades, right? He's going to be perfectly fine for week number 1. He should be fine by the time they're in training camp. He had 88 receptions, 124 targets, 1,084 yards, 7 touchdowns, and a 24.80% target share in the USC offense. And you might be thinking, Nick, Marcus Mariota is the starting quarterback. Maybe it'll be Desmond Ritter. Sure, that sounds bad, right? That sounds bad, but they're going to be able to throw the ball to Drake London. Besides Drake London and Kyle Pitts, if you're in the audience, try to name a wide receiver that is on the Atlanta Falcons. It is going to be very difficult. You're going to have to look deeply into your brain to just scrape a name out. I think that without Calvin Ridley, Drake London is going to be force-fed. When Calvin Ridley comes back next season, who knows how the pecking order is going to be there, but I think the quarterback situation will continue to get better in Atlanta, and I think that Drake London is certainly worthy of the 102. So I like Drake London a ton. Again, he is my number one receiver in Dynasty rookie drafts.
And I want to add one thing here. I don't really think you discount Drake London based on the fact that Calvin Ridley might come back in a year. I think there's a very real possibility that Calvin Ridley has played his last game for the Atlanta Falcons. It's not impossible that he comes back and is a factor on this team again, but I don't think it's likely. I don't think it's probable by any stretch that Calvin Ridley is a factor for this team again, meaning London is the future at the position. And talk about a team that is poised to take advantage of a 2023 first-round pick on a quarterback. The Falcons scouting department clearly saw this as the pass-through year in order to get to next year's very coveted quarterback class. 5 expected quarterbacks in that first round. I digress. I'm going to look at a wide receiver again here, not Kenny Pickett. Sorry, Pickett. I think I want to go with a player who has first round draft capital, who is absolutely going to be on a team that has to target him because there just aren't enough players on his offense on the outside. And that's Treylon Burks, wide receiver. He goes to Tennessee here. The 18th overall pick, so I'm not going with draft capital. Hyper athletic, especially in straight line speed, an 86th percentile speed score, really good hands. Comparable player is Jordy Nelson. What I really like to see is his first year on the field at Arkansas. He's breaking out as a 19-year-old. He had 11 games in that season with 29 receptions for 475 yards. Ended up with no receiving touchdowns, but still was a contributor all over the field, 130 special team yards. Then he gets on the field as a 20-year-old. In 9 games, he has 51 receptions, 820 receiving yards. That's 16.1 yards per reception, a 25% target share. Yeah, this guy was a superstar the minute he stepped on the field. That's exactly what I want to see. And there's huge shoes to fill in Tennessee. How healthy Robert Woods and no A.J. Brown means a ton of targets year one for Treylon Burks.
Yeah, I think Burks is stepping into a very good situation to just be the clear number one wide receiver on the team. Now, I do actually like Robert Woods a decent amount, but like you said, there's definitely the health concerns. The only issue with the Titans is the fact that they run the ball 7 million times. So why wouldn't you if you have Derrick Henry who can get 2,000 rushing yards in a season? But I do think at the end of the day, Burks is the locked and loaded wide receiver one. There's a lot of talks on what's going to happen with Tannehill in the future. I don't think Tannehill is going to be the guy for very long there in Tennessee. I don't even think Malik Willis is probably going to be the guy for very long there, but you never know. Tannehill doesn't want to coach him, so it is what it is.
Before he even steps on the field. Wow, shots fired on Malik Willis.
No, nothing against Malik Willis. I'm just saying, when you draft a quarterback that late in the NFL draft, do you really expect him to be like the franchise guy? No.
I mean, that is a fair point. It would be an anomaly for a mid to late second round pick at the quarterback position to end up being the franchise guy. Fair enough. Fair enough.
Yeah. So again, though, onto the argument, though, Burks is still a great pick. I'm not trying to be negative on your pick here. I would have taken him there as well. I like Burks a ton. And I think, like you said, just year one, this guy could just see a ridiculous amount of targets. So I like him a ton. So I'm up next. It's my pick. And while we just talked about the Jets a little bit with Breese Hall, we're going with another Jets player, and that is going to be Garrett Wilson. Now, in the past, loading up on Jets players in the first 4 picks of your rookie draft would have seemed just terrible, right? But now it's a new era in New York with the Jets, or New Jersey in reality, right? They play in MetLife. But Ohio State University wide receiver. Yeah. In 2021, he was 21 years old. Wilson played in 11 games, 70 receptions, 103 targets, over 1,000 yards, 12 touchdowns, and he had a 20.85% target share in the Buckeyes offense. For the Jets, I think he slots in as the number 2 guy there, but maybe he becomes the 1B to Elijah Moore's 1A, and I think he could easily, a year from now, become the number 1 wide receiver in this offense. There's a lot of people around the fantasy football industry that are humongous fans of Elijah Moore. Personally, I'm not going to go ahead and just tout this guy as the second coming of some crazy wide receiver. I just don't think so. I think Garrett Wilson could become the number one guy there. I think the Wilson to Wilson connection is going to be great. Now, in year number one, again with the Jets, I'm not going balls to the wall here and stating Garrett Wilson's going to go crazy. But it's just like Breese Hall, where it's like, you know what? Maybe in 2023, we see that great year. Maybe the Jets continue to improve. And if they're able to stay healthy, maybe in 2023, they have this crazy season. This year, we've talked about it a bunch of times. We're not the biggest fans of the Jets, but I think Garrett Wilson in the future is going to be fantastic. And I think this year he will be serviceable, and you could definitely play him in your roster. So at the 104, I like Garrett Wilson.
I think that's a really strong argument there. And you said it really that year one is just not the time we expect a ton of production from Wilson, despite the draft capital here. If you look at the Awesemo best ball rankings, which are available for free for a limited time only right now on awesemo.com/best-ball, by the way, the Awesemo best ball side of things, you'll see that Drake London in positional rankings comes in around wide receiver 42. That's who you took at the 102 there. At the 104, you take Garrett Wilson. We got him down at wide receiver 63, but we've got Elijah Moore just inside the top 30 receivers. You know, Braxton Berrios is also going to be a factor, most likely at some point. They'll find a way to use him as a gadget type player, but he'll take opportunities. We have Elijah Moore inside the top 30 wideouts. If we actually are wrong and Garrett Wilson utilizes his draft capital much higher, by the way, than Elijah Moore in year one, then we could be talking about Wilson inside the top 30 and Moore hovering around that wide receiver 50 to 65 range where we have the Jets wide receiver 2 projected this year. I am going to finally go at 105 with Kenneth Walker. No, sorry, guys. No quarterback for me at this point. Even 5 picks into a SuperFlex draft. If you're super needy, I get going with quarterback at this point. But I don't think I'm ready to give up the draft capital wide receivers and the 2 bell cow running back, the 2 players who I believe have a more than 50% chance of becoming bell cow running backs for their teams. There's only 2 of them. I want to snatch up the last one here in Kenneth Walker, old school kind of running back, playing the way Pete Carroll wants to play. A ground and pound type running back at Michigan State, 5'9", 211 pounds, a 31.2 BMI, means a 75th percentile BMI. He is a bowling ball, tough to tackle. I really like watching Kenneth Walker play. I'm no college film analyst, but I loved watching him play at Michigan State. Broke out as a 20-year-old. And, if you like those thighs for days running backs, Kenneth Walker is absolutely going to have one of those training camp photos. Just you wait. I'm taking him at 105, even though he's got solid competition in Carson and Penny in 22.
Yeah, he made a catch already in the rookie camp, whatever they're doing right now. He caught it one hand, and Twitter was just going crazy. It's like, dude, there's no one even on the field. Like, I don't even know if the Drew Lock who threw him the ball. It could have been, I don't even know. It might have been Pete Carroll throwing him the ball, and people were going crazy. So that's just how rookie hype is. It's always fun to see. But with Kenneth Walker, like you said, I'm pretty worried about this season as a whole because I think that Rashad Penny is going to get a lot of work, and Pete Carroll just doesn't give a shit about draft capital. Chris Carson was either undrafted or like a 7th round pick, and he was playing ahead of Rashad Penny, who they invested heavy draft capital in. So I don't think that if Kenneth Walker doesn't instantly make a lot of noise for them, it wouldn't surprise me if we saw a lot of Rashad Penny early on in 2022 and throughout the season. But in 2023, I think Kenneth Walker takes over. This is one of those rookie classes where, again, I'm just not super excited for the rookie year, but their potential is very high. I like Seattle, and I think Seattle is going to get a lot better in the future. Right now,
I'm
it's
smiling because I just looked up our best ball rankings, and Seattle has 0 running backs in the top 30 in our running back rankings, and 3 running backs in the top 40.
Yeah, I mean,
Pete Carroll doesn't care. One of them is probably going to get injured. So if you look at things on a total year scale, unfortunately, that's just the way the running back position goes. I don't want it. I certainly would like to see what happens with all 3 available, but Rashad Penny has been anything but a beacon of health. That certainly makes me more excited for Kenneth Walker's touches. And Chris Carson even was injured for a ton of the last 2 seasons, and he has no draft capital as well. At a certain point, Walker might be undeniably the best player in the backfield.
Yeah.
Let's move on. 106. How about you?
All right, 106, we're going to go with Chris Olave, wide receiver now of the New Orleans Saints. Now, Olave was one of the more interesting prospects in my book. Didn't necessarily get the best landing spot, not because I think the Saints are this awful team, but because I just feel as though Michael Thomas is going to be the guy. Now, we did talk about this on the last mock draft video that we did, just the one quarterback version. And Michael Thomas is just, you never know what's going to happen with the guy. So there's a chance that he is just absent this year, just decides to go do something else. He goes jet skiing in Florida, Le'Veon Bell style, and we never see him. But I think Michael Thomas will be there this year. I think he will be the number one wide receiver. So Olave will be the number two guy at Ohio State in 2021, 21 years old, 12 games played, 65 receptions on 103 targets, 937 yards, 13 touchdowns. 20.85% target share. Target share is one of the things that I heavily look at in terms of wide receivers at the collegiate level. The fact that Chris Olave is getting 20+% target share in an offense like Ohio State, one of the best offenses in college football, one of the more NFL, again, not an NFL style offense, but you get what I'm saying. This is a team with a lot of players that are going to go to the NFL. So the fact that he is playing that much, getting that amount of work is very important to me. I don't love New Orleans, but I do think that Chris Olave, there's a chance Michael Thomas just goes crazy and Chris Olave is the number one guy in the team, or he ends up getting hurt. So Olave is in a pretty good spot because the other wide receivers around him, we talked them up last year. Traquan Smith, Marquez Callaway. They have these other guys, and they never do anything. And if Jameis Winston is able to stay healthy, I actually think Jameis Winston's a little bit better than people give him the credit for. Shout out to Jameis for graduating from FSU a few days ago. Love Jameis Winston. Chris Olave, pick at the 106.
I dig it. Hey, right now, the Awesemo projections are pretty darn bullish on his teammate, Michael Thomas, this year. Jameis Winston has had a history of propping up wide receivers. Michael Thomas has had a history of catching everything in his path. Is it possible that Winston, given a new set of talent, he is spreading the ball out differently than certainly Drew Brees would have in the last few years of his career? But just because of the ability of Olave, he's going to be pushing the ball to his secondary receivers more often. It's possible. But with pass catchers and playmakers like Thomas and Alvin Kamara in the lineup, it is very, very difficult to project a ton of target share for Chris Olave right off the bat. The antithesis of that argument is that the second Michael Thomas or Alvin Kamara goes down, even for a limited amount of time, this offense was starving for playmaking ability. And if there is any moment where one of those two players aren't at 100%, expect Olave to be an immediate fantasy factor and a fantasy start right away in either scenario if Kamara is down or Thomas is down for a single game. He's going to play a ton of snaps. It's just hard to see a lot of targets going his way. I like the pick a lot, though. All right, we can go to 107 here because now we get in the situation where absolutely quarterback needy teams, hear me out. This is the time where you go Kenny Pickett. I'm not going to because I'm going to base things on talent because at this point in the draft, you can start to think about team needs, but in general, I want to think I want to think talent down. I want to think talent down and then draft for need if I only absolutely have to. And we'll go with Sky Moore here, Nick, because Sky Moore has a chance to do more in year one than many of these wide receivers that were picked ahead of him in the NFL draft. You know who's throwing in the ball, Patrick Mahomes. You know that Tyreek Hill is now a part of your Miami Dolphins, Nick. Sky Moore has some big shoes to fill. We're going to talk about some other players possibly later in the draft that could maybe be the number one wideout on their own team and could be picked later than the 107 here. But Sky Moore actually has the best chance of being a fantasy factor from week one right away compared to all these other players, with the exception of maybe Breese Hall. I think he's a smash pick at 107. I can't pick Kenny Pickett yet if you're just going for talent.
Yeah, I agree. I think, like you said, to be honest, the sweet spot for me would be right after Kenneth Walker was picked. That's when, if I needed Pickett, I would take him. I don't think I would take Pickett over any of those other guys. I think that Pickett will obviously come shortly soon, right? He's going to be a first round pick in most drafts, but that is definitely something we need to talk about. And then Sky Moore, the pick itself. I really like Sky Moore. I think that he could easily be the number one receiver in this offense, like you said. Now, it's probably going to take a couple weeks. I highly doubt week one we see Patrick Mahomes just force feed Sky Moore. Maybe it happens, right? Maybe it happens. But I think maybe he goes with the more reliable option like Juju, throws it to him. But then eventually we could see Sky Moore really blast off into the sky and become a great fantasy football player. So I like Sky Moore a ton. I think there's a huge gamble when you are taking Sky Moore because he didn't necessarily get the high draft capital. He could end up being a swing and a miss. But when you're drafting anyone on the Kansas City Chiefs, you just have to just hope the upside is there. You see the upside, and sky's the limit for Sky Moore. So I like Sky Moore a ton.
Yeah. 3 puns. Yeah. Rule of threes. Well done. We move on to the 108.
All right, at the 108, this is where I am very interested in a guy that not most people, a lot of people said was the best wide receiver in this draft class, and that is going to be Jameson Williams, wide receiver now of the Detroit Lions. He did tear his ACL, so that's not great. But again, this isn't like the 1950s. He'll be fine, right? They're saying as early as July 10th, could be later, maybe in August. But he should be good to go for week one at Alabama in 2021 at just 20 years old. 15 games played, 79 receptions, 118 targets, 1,500 plus yards, 15 touchdowns, 20.67% target share. He also was returning some kicks, 352 special team yards, 2 touchdowns. Now, does that mean he's going to return kicks at Detroit? Maybe, maybe not. But what that does tell me is that when you're returning kicks at Alabama, you did something correct, at least in my book. So I'm pretty confident in Jameson Williams' skill set. I think that in Detroit, he could take over as the number one guy. Amon-Ra St. Brown is still going to be a key piece in this offense. We talked about this last time. The Detroit Lions may have one of the best weapons, like the skill position players in the NFL, but they just have fucking Jared Goff as their starting quarterback. So once they eventually get rid of Jared Goff, which probably at the end of this year, they draft a new quarterback next year. The future is really bright for Detroit, and I'm just very interested in Jameson Williams because, again, I think he could be the number one target there as early as his rookie year.
A forward-thinking draft pick and some, obviously red flags based on the injuries at the end of the season, but green flags all around in the sense that the minute he gets his opportunity after transferring from Ohio State to Alabama, he scores 15 touchdowns. And like you said, he's utilized a ton on special teams, meaning the coaches say, get the ball in this guy's hand and let him do something. That's what you want to see. And that translates to the NFL. A great pickup for the Lions and a great pickup for the theoretical 108. For me, the slide has fallen. I think Kenny Pickett is the best overall prospect at this point in the draft, 109. And we should probably take a time before we even evaluate the prospect in Pickett to talk about evaluating quarterbacks in SuperFlex drafts. There will be some who probably comment on this video and tell us we are nuts for letting a quarterback slide this far any year. Because the bottom line is, guys, if this guy becomes a starter in the NFL for a decade, like many starting quarterbacks do, it was extremely silly of us to value 8 players at the flex positions ahead of Kenny Pickett. Bottom line is quarterbacks score most points in fantasy, and quarterbacks have the most longevity of any of the skill position players. It just doesn't look like Kenny Pickett has the pedigree of a typical decades-long receiver. This is the best situation for a player like Pickett. This is an ideal situation. Continuity in the franchise, coach who is more of an inspirational leader than a game leader. The clock management issues notorious for Tomlin, but his ability to actually get his teams prepared for games, absolutely strong. And Kenny Pickett is going to be prepared as a starter. I think he's going to have a hell of a competition against Mitchell Trubisky. I think Mitchell Trubisky could legitimately win that quarterback competition. And so you're left with the possibility that Kenny Pickett is sitting on the bottom of your bench or your taxi squad for a year or two, even before we see some playing time. That's the low range of outcomes. The high-end range of outcomes is he plays like he did as a 23-year-old, a very old senior at Pittsburgh in 13 games and 497 attempts. He was spectacular. 4,319 passing yards, nearly 9 yards per attempt, a 67% completion percentage. That means 2 out of every 3 passes were complete at the highest level of football. 42 touchdowns compared to 7 interceptions, and added 233 rushing yards. He's low-key athletic, an 84th percentile burst score, according to playerprofiler.com. The 109 before any other wide receivers or running backs. Take Kenny Pickett.
Yeah, the funniest take I saw on this Steelers situation is that Mitch Trubisky gets paid basically the same amount of money as Chase Edmonds. So you're not really going to have your starting quarterback for the next decade be a guy that gets paid the same amount as Chase Edmonds. So who knows about what's going to happen this year? Like you said, I wouldn't be surprised if Trubisky starts like 6, 7, 8 games this year. I think eventually Kenny Pickett will become the starter. Like you said, this is the perfect situation for a guy to come out of college. He literally played at Pittsburgh. Now he's the quarterback of the Pittsburgh Steelers. There's not a huge change. And the coaching system there by Tomlin is just fantastic. Like they just never go below 500. They typically make the playoffs. I wouldn't expect them to make the playoffs this year, but I think that Kenny Pickett is in a very strong situation with a lot of good wide receivers around him, with a team that is very good at drafting wide receivers, good at drafting weapons, and they just drafted Najee Harris, who's a pretty solid safety net for him. I don't expect him to be a top 10 quarterback in fantasy football this year, but I do think that he is a value in terms of, if you're, again, this kind of off brand of what we're talking about, but on underdog, he goes as quarterback 30. I think that that's some solid, like a solid pick there in the 200 range.
Ooh, I'm not with you there. I'm not with you. We'll argue it on the Best Ball channel because we got to keep it moving here. The 110 goes to you.
Alrighty. So at the 110, I am now up on the clock. I just went with Jameson Williams. Now we're going to go wide receiver again. This is a very wide receiver heavy first round. We've only seen 3 non-wide receivers in the first round. And basically, when I'm at this spot, I'm just looking at draft capital. Some people might say, even Sleeper has George Pickens ranked higher. Some people might take George Pickens here, but I'm going to go ahead and go with Jahan Dodson. I was surprised he got picked that high in the first round. I thought he was going to be a first round pick. He played great at Penn State last year. This man had 146 targets, 91 receptions, 1,182 yards, 12 touchdowns, and a 30% target share, which is just ridiculous. Like basically 1/3 of the time the ball is thrown, it's going to Jahan Dodson. So that's absolutely crazy. But I do not love the situation. I don't love the Washington football team. I basically put them in a body bag and a coffin last time we did this. I hate Carson Wentz. I don't like the situation, but it is very clear that he clearly ranks as the number 2 guy on this team in terms of skill set. Will he be instantly? Maybe, maybe not, because they do have other pieces on this offense. It's not like they're terrible, but I think in terms of skill set wise, I think Jahan Dodson is the clear number 2 behind Terry McLaurin. I think Carson Wentz might be better than the situation they were rolling with last year. Who knows, really? But I think that Dodson is in a good spot maybe a couple years from now. But right now, I'm just not, in terms of talking about year one, I'm just very uninterested in Dotson, but I think he is the number 2 guy there.
In terms of year one fantasy value of all the wide receivers we have mentioned, Jahan Dotson has the lowest median projection of any player when you run our first run of underdog fantasy simulations. You know, it's the second highest, though, right behind your boy Drake London, who went at 102. That's my next pick here at 111. Ooh. Christian Watson apparently got a call from Aaron Rodgers or text, whatever it was, immediately upon being drafted in the first few picks of the second round. Watson is going to have a huge opportunity in year one to make an impact. Green Bay with no real outside presence to speak of. I mean, is Allen Lazard really a number 1 wide receiver in this league? Is your boy Randall Cobb really a number 1 wide receiver at age 89 and a half years old? Christian Watson, even if he doesn't have the draft capital, I don't know how you really move away from Watson as the immediate number 1 wideout on this team. He's built like one, 6'4", 208, and he's above the 90th percentile on playerprofiler.com in catch radius, burst score, speed score, 40-yard dash. I don't care that he went to NDSU. He's going to be awesome. That's all you got to say. He's playing with the MVP of the league. He's going to be awesome. It's I like the competition that people are putting up between Sky Moore, the possible new number one in KC with Mahomes, and the possible new number one in Green Bay with Aaron Rodgers. Year one, I actually give the edge to this physical freak, Christian Watson. Wasn't that one of our drinking game from the NFL draft live stream? Anytime someone said physical freak, we had to drink.
Yeah, it was like freak athlete, something like that. But yeah,
Okay,
that was
yeah,
very
yeah.
funny.
There
Yeah,
you
and
go.
even funnier is that Christian Watson got a call from Rodgers when he got drafted. I don't even think Rodgers called his mom on Mother's Day, so hate to see that.
Savage.
That was a nice burn right there. But yeah, speaking about the actual pick, I think Christian Watson is going to be one of the biggest dice rolls in year number one. Like this guy could legitimately put up some ridiculous numbers, right? Like top 16, top 12 at the wide receiver position. Or he could put up ridiculous numbers in the exact opposite way, where it's like, wow, I'm ridiculously dumb for drafting him because he's not doing anything. He's somehow buried behind Randall Cobb because of Aaron Rodgers' fetish to throw the ball to him. So I don't really think it's like a mortal lock that he's going to be the number one, number two guy in the team. But eventually I do think he will take over there. I mean, they just have no receiving options there. They just really don't. So
It's true. We got him. We got him just slightly ahead of his current ADP on our latest rankings. And I should say, before we go to the 112 and you bring us to the 12-1 turn into round two, I do want to give a huge shout out to our presenting sponsor, Underdog Fantasy. You've heard us talking about Underdog this entire time because they just launched the Best Ball Mania 3 contest, the biggest best ball contest in the history of mankind. $2 million to first place, $1 million to second, $1 million to the regular season champion. And as we've been mentioning, we've got the rankings and projections available to you right now on Awesemo.com. Here's what's really cool, guys. You can actually download those rankings and pop them right into the rankings page on Underdog Fantasy. So even if you were auto drafting, you could auto draft from the Awesemo ranks. Of course, it's there as a guide. You always want to use positional value, but it really is that simple. Go to our website, awesemo.com/best-ball, and then you can see our rankings right there. Download the CSV, put it into Underdog, and you're up and running. Simple as that. We also got a promo code right now, promo code Awesemo. Get a first match deposit bonus up to $100 when you sign up. That's free money, guys. Absolutely take advantage of that when you sign up today. Don't forget, promo code Awesemo. Okay, Nick, take us home to end round one and start us off on round two.
all right, so we will end round one. The nice conclusion here with James Cook, running back of the, I wanted it to be the Dolphins, but now he's on the Buffalo Bills, which sucks. But at the end of the day, I think that James Cook is going to eventually slot in as the number one back on this team. It seems like early on, there's going to be a 1-2 punch of Devin Singletary and James Cook. I think Zach Moss, the truthers, have been calling for him for the last couple of years, and it just has never really panned out. I think that James Cook is an excellent receiving back. He is far from his brother. He's not Dalvin Cook, but he is James Cook. And at 22 years old at Georgia, he played in 15 games, having 113 rushing attempts for 728 rushing yards. He also had 27 receptions for 284 receiving yards and 11 total touchdowns. Devin Singletary isn't as bad as people talk about him because he's just not good for fantasy, right? Because he doesn't catch any passes, but he's actually not that bad of a running back, right? He's not the worst, but I think James Cook will be a huge benefactor of the checkdowns coming from Josh Allen. And I think that this team is going to look just as good as last year. The early leak I saw is that the Dolphins are playing the Buffalo Bills week one, where I will be laying a fat wager on the Miami Dolphins. The Bills stink. In reality, they don't stink. They are going to be very good. And James Cook is going to be, again, not the number one back on the team. I don't expect him to be a workhorse, but I do expect him to have a decent amount of fantasy value going forward.
I'm annoyed, man. Listen to these stats for Devin Singletary at the end of the 2021 season into 2022. From week 14 on, this is where Singletary finished. RB14, RB7, RB10, RB5, RB3, RB2, RB4. This dude was balling out right at the end of the season, and now he has legitimate competition. Yes, he's going to be a pass-catching back. The Bills want that specialized player, but it absolutely is a bummer for Devin Singletary. And yeah, I'm interested in running backs who could score touchdowns on teams that are going to score a lot of touchdowns. Cook fits that bill. Other than that, I'm pretty annoyed about it all around for Dynasty. We begin the second round. Who you got?
All right, it is my pick yet again, back to back. Michael Jordan, 96, 97. We're going with Alec Pierce, wide receiver now of the Indianapolis Colts. At Cincinnati in his senior year, he played in 14 games, 52 receptions on 85 targets, 884 receiving yards, 8 receiving touchdowns, 21.25% target share. None of those numbers I just read off are going to make you super pumped to draft Alec Pierce in the second round, right? But what should make you pumped is the fact that for years we tried to kind of pinpoint who the number 2 guy is going to be on Indianapolis. And at points, it's Paris Campbell, but that guy just gets hurt taking a shower. So I think that in 2022, Alec Pierce is going to be the number 2 guy. Michael Pittman is the clear number 1. Matt Ryan is significantly better than Carson Wentz. Matt Ryan is, in my opinion, by far and away the best quarterback that started on this team since Andrew Luck. So I like Alec Pierce a ton. I don't think that there's even a chance he becomes the number 1 wide receiver there, but I do think that as the number 2 guy, he should be fine.
Alec Pierce is an athletic freak drink. He really is, though. He's that super upper percentile athlete in agility and burst, the exact type of wide receiver that Indy loves to draft. Kind of a facsimile, like compared to Paris Campbell, but Campbell has not been able to stay healthy, and there absolutely is room for a secondary wideout on this team after Michael Pittman. There's no one to speak of, really, except for Campbell. I love it. I think it's time for Malik Willis, though. At the 202, I should say. It really hurt Malik Willis that he chose not to do any testing because he just didn't quite have the numbers, especially as a passer, that a player like the man he's often compared to, Lamar Jackson, had. And Lamar Jackson won the Heisman Trophy, guys. Like, this is a very different type of prospect. He is a talented player. He probably would have gone higher in the draft if certain things had broken a little bit differently. And I think I misspoke earlier and said late second round pick, actually a late third round pick for Malik Willis to the Tennessee Titans. And one of the red flags, especially when you're talking about rushing quarterbacks, is that you want to see their accuracy consistently improve over the course of their college career. And unfortunately, we didn't really see that in the way that we saw with Lamar Jackson in his college profile. When he became a starter at Liberty in 2020, he had a 64.2% completion percentage at 8.5 yards per attempt in 10 games. As a 22-year-old, the next year and last season in the college season, he played 13 games, had more passing yards. But that's because of passing volume, really. He was just at 8.4 yards per attempt, and his completion percentage actually went down to about 61%. Not saying he can't, resurface, get that back above 64, 65%. But the fact that we didn't see that upward trajectory, that upward trend, that's what scared off teams, because then you just got someone who looks down way too early. They can't keep their eyes up. The Liberty offensive line was atrocious. I'll give you that. But Malik Willis has a ton of bad mechanics to work out. He can get rushing fantasy points. That's gold for quarterbacks. I know how fantasy works. But in terms of being a long-term starter, you said it earlier in this podcast. It actually is it's pretty far odds that he becomes a long-term starter. I'd love to see it. I'd love to see another Lamar Jackson type. But the NFL draft told you all you need to know.
Yeah, I'm gonna be honest. If I was in your situation, I don't think I would have taken Malik Willis yet. And again, it's not like anything negative towards you, obviously, but like I don't think Malik Willis is worthy of a high second round pick because I don't think that he's like the odds of him becoming the starter here, like for a while, is very low in my book. Now, I think if he does become the starter, then I'm gonna sound like an idiot because, like you said, the rushing upside is immense. This is a team. Imagine how hard it's gonna be to stop Derrick Henry and Malik Willis when they can both run, and the dude has a crazy arm. So this is a good landing spot in Tennessee in my book. It's just, will he be given the opportunity? Like, how long is the leash for a guy that isn't a first round pick, not even a second round pick? He kept falling down the draft board. So again, there's a lot of unknowns with Malik Willis. I thought he was going to be a first round pick. So I think he's talented, but I mean, we saw what happened. So NFL draft capital is very talented.
Has more draft capital than Malik Willis. Anyway, we got to move on. Let's hear it with the 203.
All right, so my next pick here, we're going to go with Damian Pierce, running back of the Houston Texans. He's a guy that I've seen in some drafts go as high as the end of the first round, kind of where I picked James Cook. There's a lot of talk about him instantly becoming the number one running back in Houston. Now, he is competing with Marlon Mack, and I actually think Marlon Mack is a little underrated, but he has had injury issues in the past. And I just think based upon the backfield that you're looking at on paper, he's the most exciting back out of them. 23 years old at Florida. He played in 13 games, 100 rushing attempts, 574 rushing yards, 19 receptions, 216 receiving yards, 16 total touchdowns. 16 total touchdowns is crazy when you only get 100 rushes. You have 19 receptions. Again, I'm not saying that he's locked and loaded to be the number one back there, but when you're in the second round of a rookie draft, when you're looking at running back 4 or 5 range, I don't think you can really go wrong with a guy who year one could have a very strong impact on the Houston Texans offense. Again, not going to be the best offense in the NFL, but I think they're going to be able to put up some points, and Damian Pierce should be the number one back. Wouldn't be surprised at all if he is.
So, no surprise here that we have some discrepancies as we head into the second round. I would not be taking Pierce here. And I also want to mention that this is a big tier break for me at the running back position in rookie ranks this year. After the obvious two in Hall and Walker, Cook is kind of on his own on an island as the third best running back in the draft. But then 4 through 12 at the running back position all feel like dart throws to me. There could be an Alvin Kamara in there, absolutely, but figuring out which one is tough. And I'm looking to trade back, to be honest, unless you're taking the guy I'm taking here, because I think we missed out on one of the smash spot wide receivers that needed to go basically at the end of the first. I would have taken him instead of Pierce. That's George Pickens. Falls to the 20th pick of the second round. Everyone sees him standing as everyone would stand in front of the television as he's picked. I digress. The dude was awesome. The second he stepped onto the field at Georgia as a 19-year-old, played 12 games, 49 receptions, 727 yards, targeted at a 15% rate at Georgia right as he stepped on the field as a 19-year-old. Sign me up for that. 8 touchdowns, 2 fights. The fights are the things that everyone's talking about still to this day. The off-the-field stuff, guys, I'm not going to pretend to be the moral police here, but the off-the-field stuff is not the same as some of the other off-the-field stuff we've seen from other receivers. I think this is a classic home run mid-round pick for the Pittsburgh Steelers. They've done it before. He was awesome in college. He's huge on the outside. Like, pair him and Claypool on the outside, and then have a technician like Deontay Johnson on the inside, Pat Freiermuth running up the seam, Najee Harris in the backfield. If whoever's playing quarterback can stay upright and be accurate, they've got a squad on Pittsburgh.
Yeah, any mid-round wide receiver that goes to the Pittsburgh Steelers, you can almost blatantly just close your eyes and just pick them in your rookie draft, and then just assume that they're gonna eventually really break out for that team. The Steelers is a great landing spot, like we talked about with Kenny Pickett. They are just excellent at drafting wide receivers, and I am not the biggest fan of Chase Claypool, so I actually think that I wouldn't be surprised at all if I almost just spoiled the pick. If Pickens ends up outscoring Chase Claypool in year one, and then maybe who knows what they're going to do with Deontay Johnson as his contract is coming to a close soon. So I think Pickens is, again, he is kind of potentially worthy of a first round pick, right? I've seen him go in the first round of these drafts, so I won't argue with that pick there. I like Pickens a ton. My only argument to why I took Damian Pierce out of him is because when you said there was like a tier break, I'd put Cook and Pierce kind of in the same tier, and then after that, it's like a I don't even know how you would describe it. It's just hellhole down there. You have no idea what to think.
I think that's fair. You could put Cook and Pierce together. The draft capital just makes it different for me. All right. I get where you're coming from. Also, if you're looking at the board and you're saying, hey, did you stack Pickett and Pickens on purpose? The 2 Steelers? Hell yeah, I did. Hell yeah, I would try to do that in rookie drafts. Have that stack for 5-8 years if it works out for you. Absolutely.
Love that. All right, so it's my pick now. We are currently it is the 205, and I'm going to go with John Mechie. I almost said his name on accident. Wide receiver of the Houston Texans. Now, just like with the other Alabama wide receiver we talked about, there is health concerns because he tore his ACL. But the thought process right now, based on everything that I have read, now I am not a doctor, will never claim to be one, but the belief from at least John Mechie himself is that he will be healthy by June, which is next month. Are you 100% sure of that, Nick? No, I'm not even close to sure about that. But I do think that he will be on the field week 1 for the Houston Texans. In his junior year, 2021 at Alabama, 13 games played, 96 receptions, flip that around to get 69 on 133 targets for 1,142 receiving yards, 23.29% target share, and he also had 8 touchdowns. This isn't the best offense ever. They don't have Deshaun Watson. They have Davis Mills. But besides Brandon Cooks, they don't really have too many other options. So I like Mechie and this landing spot. And I think the Texans are going to definitely get better. I mean, it's hard to get worse.
Yeah, I mean, maybe they actually have something in Davis Mills, and if
Good.
so, Mechie could easily be the wide receiver 2, the number 2 overall option. I see you're high on the long-term view of the Texans. Not sure I feel the same way, but I wish you well, and I wish that pick well as well. Mechie was electric when healthy.
Mhm.
I'm going with Rashad White here, picked by it's really about landing spot, right? Picked by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at the end of the 3rd round. Have we seen 3rd rounders for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in recent years completely flame out? If you're not going to keep Tom Brady upright, you're not going to play, period. But the Arizona State prospect, very old prospect, by the way, 23.3. That kind of actually leans me towards him playing more to begin his career. Because if you just sit on the bench for 2 years, you got this 25-year-old on your team who you have no idea what he's like. And at least he tested well, a 87th percentile burst score, 6 foot, 214 pounds. So for a light guy, it's just a 30th percentile BMI. At least he can fly. So maybe he becomes a pass catching specialist on a team that is going to score touchdowns if Tom Brady's healthy and doesn't actually have a whole lot of young pass catchers they can rely on outside of their big 2 receivers. So I actually like Rashad White maybe as a non-Gio Bernard pass catching back to end the season. Still, you're in that meh pool of running backs. If you like other players ahead of him in the running back pool, I get it. Let's move on here. What do you got for your next pick?
All right, my next pick here after Rashad White is going to be Wandel Robinson. Now, there's a lot of people talking about Wandel Robinson, and it seems like there's no one in the middle. Either they really like Wandel Robinson, or they think that Wandel Robinson is going to do absolutely nothing for the Giants. This is a wide receiver core that is mediocre right now. Kenny Galladay, they paid him all the money. They have Kadarius Toney. I actually think Kadarius Toney is going to be pretty good, but I think Wandel Robinson could eventually pivot himself into a pretty strong role in this offense. I think year 1, there's really not a lot of hope for Wandel Robinson, right? Because it's Daniel Jones. Daniel Jones is done after this year. They're going to get a better quarterback. Things are going to get better. So when you're drafting Wandel Robinson, you're investing in the future. This year, you might as well just leave him on the taxi squad. And unless some crazy injuries happen, I don't even know if I'd want to even play him even in a positive matchup. How many matchups are going to be positive this year for the Giants? Who really knows? But I think that Wandel Robinson, as in terms of a skilled player, is pretty skilled for where he's going here in 2021. Kentucky, 21 years old, 13 games played, 104 receptions, 144 targets, 1,334 receiving yards, 7 touchdowns, 39.30% target share, 39% target share, which is just ridiculous. That is just so high. I mean, Kentucky is a basketball school, so you don't really expect them to have some crazy wide receiver talent. But I think that if they get rid of Daniel Jones, which they will, right? They decline his 5th-year option. They do get a new quarterback there. Now, think about it this way. The new coach drafted Wandel Robinson. He didn't fucking pay up Kenny Galladay. He didn't draft Kadarius Toney. So maybe there's a little bit of coach favoritism there. Wandel Robinson gets a little bit more show year 1 than I thought initially.
He's going to have to be a unicorn. He's 5'8", 179. I got it. He scored a ton at Kentucky. He had a ton of yardage, targeted nearly 40% of the time. He might be too small. I hope I'm wrong. Wandale is already someone I have a little bit in best ball. Don't get me wrong. Doesn't mean I don't want to draft him, period, at the end of drafts. I'm worried that it's just too small for the NFL. I'm maybe he bulks up and he's fine, but you have the draft capital. I'll tell you that 211 is really solid draft capital. So he's got a shot. Speaking of having a shot, Tyler Algiere, I believe is how you pronounce his name, has a legitimate chance as a 4th round pick to be cut by the time training camp ends and he's an beginning of the 5th round pick, actually. And he has a legitimate chance to be the starting running back on first and second down by week 1. That is how high and how low the range of outcomes are for Tyler Algiere. Allgeier is how we say it. Okay, we're going to get used to that. Played at BYU, didn't really play a whole lot until his age 20 season, his 3rd season there. And he only had 150 attempts for 1,130 yards. That's pretty solid. Didn't really catch a lot of passes ever at BYU and didn't test very well. Still, talk about a player who had a decent target share, middle of the road spark score. The depth chart is Cordero Patterson and nobody else. Hey, if the Falcons like him enough in training camp, somebody needs to get rushes on that team. Mike Davis is gone.
Yeah, no, I agree. The argument here is that he could just easily be the best running back, right? Cordero Patterson is not he's good. He's good for fantasy, but I don't think he's the best running back on this roster. I think Algiere easily could be. Like you said, they cut Mike Davis. And when you're looking at a 4th round running back, exactly like what you said, the range of outcomes is crazy. Especially when you're on a team like the Falcons. Like you said, he might just get cut. He might be the starting running back. He might be Adrian Peterson. You literally never know. So I think that Tyler Algiere here is very interesting. After those first 4 running backs, like I said, it is just a dartboard. You're just launching a dart at the thing, trying to find a needle in the haystack here. But I think that's an interesting pick. So I'm up here. I'm going with David Bell, wide receiver of the Cleveland Browns. Now, outside of Amari Cooper, I think I failed to mention Amari Cooper's name, even though I thought him in my head when I picked David Bell in last draft. I forgot to mention Amari Cooper, but Amari Cooper's the clear number 1. Outside of that, they don't have anyone. Jarvis Landry is not going to be coming back based on the recent reports. They have Anthony Use the Schwartz. They have Donovan Peoples-Jones. They don't really have anything, really. So I think that David Bell, even though he's not a 1st round pick or something, could slot in as the number 2 guy there. At Purdue, 2021, 11 games played, 93 receptions, 134 targets, 1,286 yards, 6 receiving touchdowns, 23.26% target share. Again, nothing insane, nothing crazy, but when Deshaun Watson is back, having Deshaun Watson's number 2 wide receiver could be just very beneficial for fantasy, especially with how good people think the Browns are going to be and how good I believe the Browns will be if Deshaun Watson and when he returns again. That's up in the air. Who knows? 4 games, 8 games, whole season. Who knows how long the suspension will be? But David Bell kind of linked with Deshaun Watson.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. Being linked to an elite quarterback right away can help you, especially if you're getting on the field. Right now, we don't have Deshaun Watson, projected for exactly a full slate of games, but we can't really put a number on a theoretical suspension. So we're just kind of throwing his per game stats into our season-long projections right now. And obviously this will change over the course of the offseason as we get more information. But right now, it's hard to take Watson outside of your top 10 in fantasy. And that means somebody other than Amari Cooper is going to step up in a lot of games. David Bell is a great option in that regard. Speaking of somebody else stepping up, a player that I really like, and maybe this is a little too early, and maybe I'm going a little too bullish, but maybe it's because I've been putting a bet at plus 6,100 to win Rookie of the Year. Justin Ross, undrafted, out of Clemson. You probably know Justin Ross's name if you watched him play as a freshman with Trevor Lawrence, essentially broke out right on national TV in the college football playoffs and the national championship game. His age 19 season, a ton of spectacular grabs en route to an 1,000-yard season at Clemson with the help of Trevor Lawrence. Justin Ross was spectacular, and then just a wild turn of events. He takes a small hit in practice, feels this weird numbness, gets diagnosed with a disease that I unfortunately can't even pronounce, and no other pro football player has ever had it. Gets surgery from the same doctor that did Ryan Shazier's neck surgery. He clears him. It takes months for him to get cleared by the Clemson doctors. Then, right as he gets cleared, he gets COVID, gets a really bad case of it, loses 15 pounds, loses essentially the rest of his final season because he has a stress fracture in his foot. The bottom line is when this dude is healthy, he's unstoppable. And now he has Patrick Mahomes as his quarterback. He's a very different physical player than Sky Moore that can play on the field together. This dude is 6'4", 210. And even in the highlight videos I was watching of this guy when I got ready for the draft, all the announcers are talking about him in his freshman year. Like, this could be the next great one, the next in the line of all those Clemson wideouts. Like, this guy was the chosen one. You were the chosen one. Star Wars reference for you guys. But it's possible Justin Ross, now that he has been cleared, knock on wood, stays healthy, doesn't have a flare up again, gets passes from Patrick Mahomes a whole lot. He could make an impact this year.
Yeah. His story is just like one of those things that, like, if he does work out, that's like a movie. Like, literally, like,
Truly.
it's like a movie plot. It sounds fake, like, but it's real. Justin Ross is a guy that before the Chiefs got him, I got him in the 4th round of my rookie draft that I did. So I could see why his ADP would obviously move when you are now on the Kansas City Chiefs with Patrick Mahomes. Who knows how long Travis Kelce has left? Who knows? Maybe 2 years from now, there's no Kelce and Justin Ross is running train over there in Kansas City. So I like Ross. I think he's an interesting pick. And don't be surprised if he gets taken in the 2nd round of your draft. I mean, some people might say, oh, that's a reach, blah, blah, blah. But you have to understand that with the team he's on and with how good he looked at college prior to all this crazy shit happening, he was amazing. And a lot of people had very high praises of him. So my pick, I'm up now. Someone else has to take a quarterback eventually. Most people would take Desmond Ritter here. Man said he's going to win a Super Bowl for the Falcons. All that talk.
Jimmy
Matt
for Lawrence.
Corral.
Okay.
Matt Corral will be my pick here. I think he's going to be the quarterback one pretty soon. I mean, my eyes can't stand Sam Darnold. I'm so done with that. The Carolina Panthers quarterback situation is a disaster, unmitigated disaster. At Ole Miss, 22 years old, Matt Corral, nothing fantastic, but 13 games, 386 passing yards, 386 passing attempts, I should say, 3,349 passing yards, 67.90% completion percentage, 20 passing touchdowns, 5 interceptions, 614 rushing yards. I don't expect this guy to be the next Lamar Jackson, next Kyler Murray, next Josh Allen in terms of rushing upside, but he does have it. He's probably better than Sam Darnold. I mean, you could throw me in there. I might be better than Sam Darnold. So I think Matt Corral could see out of him and Malik Willis, I think he will play more games in 2021 or 2022, I should say, and maybe even going forward. So I like Matt Corral. Not in love with the skill set. I just like the situation.
Actually, that's probably a good call. That's probably a good call. The Corral has a significantly higher chance of playing a significant role this season than Malik Willis. We close things out with the end of the 2nd round if you're playing a 12-team league with Jalen Tolbert. Wide receiver goes to the Dallas Cowboys, and landing spot is extremely important here. Played at South Alabama, picked in the 24th pick of the 3rd round. And what I like to see from small school prospects is the moment you step on the field, you are undeniable the best player on the field in the sense that you're always open. So you have a target share well above 20%, and you're scoring all the time. That's really a criteria that I care a lot more for these small school players than I do about bigger school players. Bottom line is 23% target share for Jalen Tolbert, 3 straight seasons at South Alabama. He was at 32 and above in target share the last 2 seasons. He ended his college career with 22 total touchdowns. Now we're talking. He also goes to a team that lost Amari Cooper and lost Cedric Wilson. So while Michael Gallup might move to the outside, assuming he's healthy from his late season ACL tear, the 6'1", 194 Tolbert also is affected by the fact that Cedric Wilson is now part of your Miami Dolphins. So you got a ton of targets, especially in the slot, available for a high-octane offense that expects to win the NFC East and score a whole lot on the way. Tolbert could be an immediate fantasy impact right away, available at this 2-3 turn. Sign me up. Any last thoughts for us? Because we almost went an hour here. We did about a 35, 40-minute draft at the 1 QB. If you wanted more in depth, we gave it to you today. Nick, any like final players or any thoughts about some players we missed before we get out of here?
Yeah, some players we missed. I think Trey McBride is almost a lock to go in most drafts inside the top 2 rounds. I don't think that he's a guy that I would put a lot of value in having a great 2022, but after Zach Ertz eventually is gone, I think that Trey McBride could be the starting tight end there, or should be at least based upon draft capital. Brian Robinson, running back of the Washington football team. There's a lot of, or Washington Commanders
Yeah.
now. There's a lot of talk about him potentially being the number 2 guy behind Antonio Gibson. And with how Ron Rivera just magically forgets who Antonio Gibson is and uses JD McKissick, that could be very good news for Brian Robinson, who looked pretty solid in college. And then there's 2 other quarterbacks just to name. Desmond Ritter, like I said, dude said he was going to win a Super Bowl. I highly doubt it, but would you be surprised at all if he plays maybe even more games than Corral this year? No, because I don't think Mariota is all that great. And then Sam Howell, quarterback of the Washington football team. And that's really just a dig at Carson Wentz, because I don't think Carson Wentz is really that guy. And I think if I am the Washington football team, if Carson Wentz doesn't end up playing fantastic, I would switch to Sam Howell if I was Ron Rivera.
There you go. I'll give you just a few more on the way out. Isaiah Spiller goes to the Chargers. If Eckler goes down at any point this season, he will absolutely have a role. Velus Jones goes in the 7th pick of the 3rd round to the Chicago Bears, who have no one outside of Darnell Mooney. He's going to be 87 years old when he steps on the field. No, he's actually a 25-year-old prospect. Seriously, guys, he's like 4.5 years older than last year's Rookie of the Year, Jamar Chase. But he has an opportunity year 1. Pierre Strong also has an opportunity in the New England backfield. Ramondre Stevenson's still there. Players like J.J. Taylor. But Brandon Bolden is gone, and James White is another year older and coming off of a huge injury. And then the Steelers actually have another mid-round wide receiver pick, the speedster Calvin Austin. Very small. I degraded small wide receivers in the slot, but if Deontay Johnson ends up walking next year, they are going to need some help, and they need to replace the Ray McLeod role that they ended up using a lot last year. He is no longer a member of the Steelers. Austin probably gets on the field year 1. That will do it for our in-depth SuperFlex mock draft. Nick, this has been a ton of fun. We have a ton more Dynasty content as we dig into the offseason, and of course, with the best ball rankings out and the fantasy football draft season right around the corner, we have so much more content. This has been a ton of fun. We're going to keep things going right here on the Awesemo Fantasy Football channel. So make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you always know when we're going live. Until next time, for Nick at Notorious Fantasy on Twitter, I'm Matt Savoca. We'll see you guys later.